David sat in his old pickup truck outside the construction office, staring at the rejection letter through the windshield. The paper seemed to mock him as the wind tried to snatch it from under his wiper blade. Third job interview this month, third rejection. The reason was always the same. They wanted someone with recent experience, someone who hadn't taken a 2-year break from the field. If only they knew why he had to take that break. If only they understood that those 2 years weren't a vacation or a career change experiment. They were spent in hospital waiting rooms, holding his wife Kate's hand through chemotherapy sessions, and learning how to braid his 7-year-old daughter Lily's hair because Mommy was too weak to do it anymore. He pulled the letter from the windshield and crumpled it up, tossing it onto the passenger seat, where it joined 2 other rejection letters from earlier in the week. The truck's engine coughed as he turned the key, a sound that reminded him of Kate's last days. Everything seemed to be falling apart at the same time. The dashboard clock showed 2:15 a.m. He'd been sitting there for over an hour just thinking about the stack of unpaid bills on his kitchen table, thinking about the eviction notice that came yesterday, thinking about how he was going to explain to Lily why they might have to move again, this time maybe into his sister's tiny apartment across town. As he drove through the empty streets, David's mind wandered to better times. Kate used to joke that he could build anything with his hands. She'd bring him broken furniture from garage sales, and he'd turn them into beautiful pieces that looked like they belonged in fancy magazines. She believed in his dream of starting his own construction company more than he ever did. "You're going to build houses that families will love for generations," she used to say while he worked in their garage workshop. "Houses with character, not those cookie-cutter boxes they're putting up everywhere." But dreams don't pay medical bills. Dreams don't keep the lights on when your wife can't work anymore, and you have to choose between paying for her medicine or the mortgage. Dreams certainly don't help when the medical debt collectors start calling every day. The truck wheezed as it climbed the hill toward the old Riverside Bridge. This bridge held so many memories. 5 years ago, he'd brought Kate here on their anniversary. They'd watched the sunset paint the river gold while he worked up the courage to propose. She'd said yes before he even finished asking the question, laughing and crying at the same time. "Of course I'll marry you, you silly man," she'd said. "I've been waiting for you to ask for months." Now the bridge felt different. It felt heavy with sadness and broken promises. The same place where he'd promised Kate they'd grow old together. Where they'd planned their future with Lily. Where they'd dreamed about the house he'd build for them someday. As his truck reached the middle of the bridge, the engine started making that terrible grinding sound again. David pulled over to the side, knowing he probably couldn't afford whatever was wrong with it. He sat there for a moment, wondering how many more things could go wrong in one day. That's when he saw her. A young woman stood at the edge of the bridge, beyond the safety barrier. Her long, dark hair moved in the night breeze, and even from a distance, David could see her shoulders shaking. She was looking down at the water far below, and something about her posture made David's heart skip a beat. He'd had moments like this himself. Dark moments in the hospital parking lot after Kate's diagnosis. Moments in his empty bedroom after the funeral when Lily was sleeping, and the house felt too quiet. Moments when the pain felt too heavy to carry anymore, but seeing someone else in that position made everything clear. David turned off his truck and stepped out slowly, not wanting to startle her. His work boots made soft sounds on the bridge's walkway as he approached. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he called out gently, stopping about 10 feet away from her. His voice was calm, the same tone he used when Lily had nightmares. "The stars are really bright tonight." The young woman turned slightly, and David could see tears on her cheeks reflecting the streetlight. She looked to be in her early 20s, maybe 25. Her clothes were expensive looking but wrinkled, like she'd been wearing them for days. "I used to bring my wife here," David continued, moving a tiny bit closer. "She loved watching the water. Said it helped her think through problems." He paused, then added, "I'm David, by the way." "I'm sorry about your wife," the young woman said quietly. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for a long time. "Is she? Did she? Cancer took her about a year ago," David said simply. "But she taught me something important before she left. She said that sometimes when we can't see the next step, we just have to trust that it's there anyway." The young woman was quiet for a long moment. David could hear the water flowing below and the distant sound of a train somewhere in the valley. "I don't think there are any more steps for me," she whispered. "That's what I thought too. For a while," David said. "After Kate died, I had a 7-year-old daughter asking me why mommy wasn't coming home, and I honestly didn't know how to answer her. I didn't know how to be both parents. I didn't know how to pay the bills without Kate's income. I didn't know how to braid hair or help with math homework or any of the 1,000 things Kate used to do. He took another small step forward. But you know what I learned? I learned that sometimes we don't have to see the whole staircase. We just have to see the next step. And right now, the next step is getting away from this edge and talking about whatever brought you here. The young woman turned to face him completely now. Her eyes were red from crying, but David could see intelligence there. And something else. A tiny spark of curiosity. What if the next step is just more pain? She asked. Then we take that step too, David said. And then the next one. And eventually, maybe the steps start leading somewhere better. But we'll never know if we don't keep taking them. David thought about Lily, probably asleep in her bed right now, trusting that Daddy would come home safe. He thought about all the times he'd wanted to give up but couldn't because she needed him. I have a daughter, he said. She's 8 now. And every day she teaches me that tomorrow might be better than today. Not because everything's perfect, but because we get another chance to try. The wind picked up and David saw the young woman shiver. She was still standing on the wrong side of the barrier, but she wasn't looking down at the water anymore. She was looking at him. What's your daughter's name? She asked. Lily, David said with a small smile. And she makes the world's worst pancakes, but she's so proud of them that I eat every bite. You know what? The sun's going to come up in a few hours. How about we go get some real pancakes and figure out what those next steps look like? The young woman stared at David for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Her grip on the bridge railing was so tight that her knuckles had turned white. Pancakes, she repeated softly, and for the first time, David heard something that might have been the beginning of a smile in her voice. When was the last time I ate pancakes? Well, if you come with me, you can find out, David said gently. There's a 24-hour diner about 10 minutes from here. The coffee's terrible, but the pancakes are decent. And the waitress there, Betty, she's got this way of making everyone feel like family. The young woman looked down at the water again, and David's heart clenched. He took another careful step forward. You know, he said, I used to think that bridge was the answer too. After Kate died, I'd come here sometimes late at night when Lily was asleep. I'd stand right where you're standing and wonder if everyone would be better off without me. What stopped you? She asked without looking at him. A crayon drawing, David said with a sad laugh. Lily had drawn this picture of our family, me, her, and Kate, but she'd drawn Kate with angel wings. At the bottom, she'd written Daddy and me forever, in a 7-year-old's handwriting, you know. All crooked letters and backwards R's. He paused, remembering that night. I realized that if I wasn't there, who was going to help her with her homework? Who was going to teach her how to change a tire or tell her about her mom when she got older? Who was going to be there when she needed someone to believe in her? The young woman finally turned around completely, though she still held onto the railing behind her. My parents stopped believing in me a long time ago, she said quietly. What happened? David asked, keeping his voice gentle. She was quiet for so long that David thought she might not answer. The wind carried the sound of early morning traffic from the highway below, and somewhere in the distance a church bell chimed 3 times. I had this business, she finally said, a technology startup. I was so sure it was going to change everything. I put everything into it. My savings, my time, my relationships. I convinced my parents to invest their retirement money. I promised my fiancé that we'd be rich in 2 years. Her voice cracked a little. I was 24 and thought I knew everything. I had this fancy business degree and all these awards from school. Everyone said I was brilliant, that I had the golden touch. What kind of business was it? David asked. An app for small businesses, she said. Something to help them manage their inventory and connect with customers. It seemed so simple, so obvious. I couldn't understand why no one had done it before. David nodded. And what went wrong? Everything, she said with a bitter laugh. The technology was harder than I thought. We couldn't get the bugs worked out. Big companies came in with similar products and better funding. Our customers started leaving. And then, she stopped, taking a shaky breath. Then the money ran out, she continued. 6 months ago, I had to shut everything down. My parents lost their entire retirement savings. My fiancé left me the day after I told him we were bankrupt. He said he couldn't be with someone who was such a failure. David felt his heart break for this young woman. He recognized the pain in her voice, the same devastation he'd felt when the medical bills started piling up and he realized he couldn't save Kate, no matter how hard he worked. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Anna," she said after a moment. "Anna Chen. Anna, can I tell you something? Failure doesn't make you a failure. I know that sounds like something people say to make you feel better, but I mean it. You took a risk. You tried to build something. That takes more courage than most people have." Anna shook her head. "I destroyed my family's future. I wasted 3 years of my life. I trusted the wrong people and made terrible decisions." "You were 24, David said. "I made plenty of terrible decisions at 24. We all did. The difference is that most of us were making small mistakes with small consequences. You were brave enough to dream big, which means when things went wrong, they went really wrong." He leaned against the bridge railing, careful to stay on the safe side. "You know what I was doing at 24? I was working for a construction company, showing up late half the time because I was too busy partying. I had no ambition, no plans, no goals. I was just floating through life." "But you have a family now," Anna said. "You had something worth living for." "I do now," David agreed. "But back then, I was nobody special. It took me years to figure out what I wanted, and it took meeting Kate to realize I could be better than I was." Anna looked out over the water. "I don't know how to be better than this. I don't know how to face my parents or find a new job or start over. Everyone in my industry knows what happened. Who's going to hire someone who lost millions of dollars of other people's money? Someone who recognizes that you learned more from that failure than most people learn in 10 years of playing it safe," David said. "Someone who sees that you have the guts to take risks and the character to take responsibility when things go wrong." "You don't know me," Anna said. "You don't know what kind of person I really am. I know you're standing on a bridge at 3 a.m. because you feel responsible for other people's pain," David said. "I know you stayed and talked to a stranger instead of just doing what you came here to do. I know you asked about my wife when I mentioned her. That tells me you're someone who cares about others, even when you're in your own worst moment." Anna was crying again, but quietly this time. "I used to have so many plans," she whispered. "I was going to change the world. I was going to make my parents proud. I was going to prove that all those professors who believed in me were right." "You still can," David said. "Maybe not in the way you originally planned, but you can still do something that matters. You can still make people proud, but you have to stick around to find out how." A car drove past on the bridge, its headlights sweeping over them for a moment before disappearing into the night. Anna watched it go. "I don't have anywhere to live," she said suddenly. "I've been staying in my car for the past 2 weeks. I spent my last $20 on gas yesterday." "Well," David said, "that's a problem we can solve. Betty at the diner knows everyone in town. She's probably got ideas about places to stay, people who are hiring, that sort of thing. And my truck might be falling apart, but it'll get us there." Anna looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care what happens to me?" David thought about that question. "Because a year ago, when I was in my darkest place, my neighbor brought over a casserole and sat with me while I cried. She didn't know me well, but she saw that I was drowning and threw me a rope. Maybe this is me passing that rope along." Anna slowly, carefully climbed back over the barrier to the safe side of the bridge. David let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Okay," she said, her voice still shaky but stronger than before. "Let's go get those pancakes." The diner's neon sign flickered in the pre-dawn darkness, casting pink and blue shadows across the empty parking lot. David's truck wheezed to a stop next to the only other car there, a beat-up sedan that probably belonged to Betty, the night shift waitress. "This is it," David said, looking over at Anna. She'd been quiet during the short drive, staring out the passenger window at the sleeping town. "I know it doesn't look like much, but Betty makes a mean stack of pancakes." Anna managed a small smile. "Right now, anywhere that's warm and has coffee sounds perfect." The bell above the door chimed as they walked in, and Betty looked up from wiping down tables. She was in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and kind eyes that had seen plenty of late-night stories. "Well, well," Betty said, walking over with a coffee pot already in hand. "David Thompson, what brings you out at this hour? And who's your friend?" "This is Anna," David said, sliding into a booth by the window. "Anna, meet Betty. She's been keeping this place running for about 20 years. 15, Betty corrected with a laugh. automatically filling 2 coffee cups. But who's counting? You two look like you've had a long night. The usual for you, David. David nodded, then looked at Anna. What sounds good to you? Anna stared at the menu for a moment as if she'd forgotten how to make simple decisions. I don't really know. What's good here? Everything, Betty said warmly. But if you want my recommendation, try the blueberry pancakes with a side of bacon. And you look like you could use some orange juice too. Get some vitamins in you. After Betty walked away to place their order, Anna wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it was an anchor. She's nice, she said quietly. Betty's good people, David agreed. She's helped half this town through rough patches. When Kate was sick, Betty would pack up extra food and bring it by our house. Said it was leftovers that would go bad anyway, but I knew better. Anna took a sip of her coffee and made a face. You weren't kidding about the coffee. Terrible, right? David laughed. But somehow it grows on you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the occasional car pass by outside. The sky was starting to show the first hints of dawn, a pale gray line on the horizon. Can I ask you something? Anna said finally. Sure. What did you do before your wife got sick? You mentioned construction, but what kind? David's face lit up a little. I was a project manager for a medium-sized company. We did mostly residential work, custom homes, renovations, that sort of thing. But what I really loved was sustainable building. You know, energy-efficient homes, solar panels, using recycled materials when possible. That sounds interesting, Anna said. Was it good work? It was great work, David said, his enthusiasm growing. There's something amazing about building a house that a family's going to love for decades. Making it efficient so their energy bills are low. Making it healthy so their kids can grow up in clean air. I had all these ideas about affordable housing that didn't look cheap, you know? Anna leaned forward, genuinely interested. What kind of ideas? Well, David said, pulling out a napkin and starting to sketch with a pen from his pocket. Most affordable housing is built with the cheapest materials possible, right? But what if you used smart design instead of expensive materials, like solar orientation to reduce heating costs, better insulation, smaller footprints that are still functional? He was drawing as he talked, his hands moving confidently across the napkin. I had this plan for these modular homes. Not trailers, but real houses that could be built in sections and assembled on site. Families could start with a basic 2-bedroom unit and add on as their needs grew. Anna studied his rough sketch. Even on a napkin with a ballpoint pen, she could see that David knew what he was doing. This is really smart. Did you ever try to develop this? David's face fell a little. I was working on it before Kate got sick. Had some investors interested, a few contractors who wanted to partner with me. But when Kate's treatment started getting expensive, he shrugged. I had to focus on steady paychecks instead of dreams. Betty appeared with their food, setting down plates piled high with golden pancakes. Here we go. Anna, I brought you some extra syrup. You look like you could use some sweetness in your life. Thank you, Anna said, and Betty squeezed her shoulder gently before walking away. As they ate, David found himself asking about Anna's business background. So you built an app for small businesses. What was that like? Anna poked at her pancakes for a moment before answering. It was exciting at first. I had this team of really talented people, and we were all working 18-hour days because we believed in what we were doing. The technology part was challenging, but I loved the business side. Talking to customers, understanding their problems, figuring out solutions. What kind of problems were you solving? Mostly inventory management and customer relationships, Anna said, taking a bite of pancake. Small businesses often can't afford the big software packages that larger companies use, but they still need to track their products and connect with customers. We were trying to make something simple and affordable. David nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. When I was working construction, the small contractors I knew were always struggling with that kind of stuff. They'd have notebooks full of customer information and no good way to track jobs or materials. Exactly, Anna said, her eyes lighting up for the first time since David had met her. That's exactly the problem we were trying to solve. But we tried to do too much at once. We wanted to be everything to everyone, and we ended up being not quite enough for anyone. What would you do differently if you could start over? Anna was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Start smaller, I think. Pick one specific problem and solve it really well before trying to expand. and I'd spend more time actually working with small businesses, understanding their day-to-day challenges instead of assuming I knew what they needed. David finished his pancakes and leaned back in the booth. You know, it sounds like you learned a lot from that experience, even if it didn't work out the way you planned. I learned that I don't know as much as I thought I did, Anna said with a rueful smile. But I also learned that I really love solving business problems. Even when everything was falling apart, the part I enjoyed most was talking to customers and trying to figure out how to help them. That's a valuable skill, David said. Not everyone can do that. Anna looked out the window where the sky was getting lighter. I just don't know how to use it anymore. Who's going to trust someone who lost millions of dollars? Someone who recognizes that you learned from your mistakes, David said. Someone who needs help with business problems and sees that you understand them now in a way you didn't before. Betty refilled their coffee cups and left the check on the table. You two take your time, she said. Sometimes the best conversations happen right around sunrise. David looked at the check and pulled out his wallet, counting the bills inside. Anna noticed. Let me pay for my part, she said. I've got it, David said, but Anna shook her head. I may be broke, but I'm not helpless. I've got enough for pancakes and coffee. As they split the check, David found himself thinking about Anna's business skills and his construction knowledge. There was something there, some connection he couldn't quite put his finger on yet. But for the first time in months, he felt like he was having a conversation about possibilities instead of just problems. 3 weeks had passed since that night on the bridge. David hadn't expected to hear from Anna again after he'd dropped her off at the YMCA. But she'd surprised him by showing up at the construction site where he'd finally landed a temporary job. She looked different, cleaner, more rested, wearing clothes that actually fit her instead of the wrinkled outfit from that first night. I wanted to thank you, she'd said simply, and ask if you'd like to grab lunch. That lunch had turned into coffee the next day, which turned into Anna helping Lily with her math homework, while David fixed a neighbor's fence. Slowly, Anna had become part of their routine. She was staying at a women's shelter downtown but spent most of her days at the library, using their computers to look for work and, as David discovered, researching construction and sustainable building. Now they were sitting in David's small backyard while Lily played with her dolls on the porch steps. Anna had her laptop balanced on her knees, showing David something that made his eyes widen. You've been busy, David said, scrolling through pages of business plans, market research, and financial projections on her screen. I couldn't sleep, Anna admitted. So I started researching everything you told me about sustainable housing. David, do you have any idea how big this market is? How many people are looking for exactly what you were talking about? David shook his head. I mean, I knew there was interest, but... Look at this, Anna said, clicking to a different page. The affordable housing crisis isn't just about having enough homes. It's about having homes that people can actually afford to live in long term. Energy costs, maintenance costs, repairs, they add up fast. She pulled up another document. I found the business plan you started working on before Kate got sick. It was in that box of papers you let me borrow. David looked embarrassed. You read all that old stuff? David, that wasn't old stuff. That was brilliant stuff. Your modular home concept could revolutionize affordable housing. And your sustainability ideas, they're not just good for the environment, they're good for people's wallets. Anna turned the laptop so David could see better. I ran some numbers. A family buying one of your modular homes would save an average of 40% on their energy bills compared to traditional construction. Over 30 years, that's tens of thousands of dollars. Anna, David said slowly, what are you getting at? Anna closed the laptop and looked at him directly. I want to restart your construction company with you. As partners, David nearly choked on his coffee. Partners? Anna, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't afford to start a company. I'm barely keeping food on the table as it is. What if you didn't need to worry about the startup costs? Anna asked quietly, what do you mean? Anna was quiet for a long moment, watching Lily arrange her dolls in a careful circle. I need to tell you something I should have mentioned weeks ago. When I said my parents invested their retirement money in my business, I wasn't exactly telling the whole story. David waited, sensing this was important. My father is Robert Chen, Anna said, as if that should mean something to David. When David looked blank, Anna continued. He owns Chen Industries. They make computer components, software systems, that sort of thing. My family, we're not struggling financially the way I made it sound. David stared at her. Your family is rich? Very rich, Anna said softly. And when I lost their investment, it wasn't their retirement money. It was what most people would consider pocket change to them, but to me it represented their faith in me, their belief that I could succeed on my own merit. Why didn't you tell me this before? Anna looked down at her hands. Because when people find out about my family's money, everything changes. They either want something from me or they assume I'm some spoiled rich kid who doesn't understand real problems. But you treated me like I was just Anna, a person who was hurting and needed help. I hadn't experienced that in years. David was processing this information, trying to reconcile the young woman who'd been sleeping in her car with someone from a wealthy family. So when you said you were broke, he started. I am broke, Anna said firmly. I have access to a trust fund that I've never touched, but I wanted to make it on my own. Even now I haven't asked my family for help. I've been living at the shelter because I refused to go home and admit failure. Anna, David said gently. Asking for help isn't admitting failure. It's being smart, is it? Anna asked. Or is it giving up on being independent? David thought about this. When Kate was sick, I had to accept help from neighbors, from her family, from people at church. It was hard on my pride, but it wasn't giving up. It was recognizing that sometimes we can accomplish more together than we can alone. Anna nodded slowly. That's what I've been thinking about these past few weeks. I've been watching you with Lily, seeing how you've built this life after losing so much. You didn't give up, but you also didn't try to do everything alone. You let people help you. What does this have to do with starting a construction company? Anna opened her laptop again and showed David a different document. This is a proposal I've been working on. I want to use my trust fund to capitalize a new company, Thompson Construction and Design. You'd handle all the technical aspects, the building, the project management. I'd handle the business side, marketing, client relationships, finances. David stared at the professional-looking business plan on the screen. Anna, this is incredible, but I can't let you risk your money on me. You wouldn't be risking my money, Anna said. We'd be investing it together in something that could help a lot of people. Look, I've learned something important from my failure. I tried to build a business around technology I didn't fully understand, serving customers I didn't really know. But this is different. She clicked to another page. You understand construction better than anyone I've met. You know what works, what doesn't, what customers actually need. And I understand business, how to scale operations, how to manage finances, how to build relationships with suppliers and clients. But what if it fails? David asked. What if we lose everything like you did before? Then we'll fail together, Anna said simply. But at least we'll fail trying to build something that matters. Homes for families, communities for people, jobs for workers like you who deserve better than temporary construction work. Lily looked up from her dolls. Daddy, is Anna going to help you build houses? David looked at his daughter, then at Anna, then at the business plan on the screen. For the first time in years, he could see a clear path forward, not just surviving day to day, but actually building something meaningful. I don't know, sweetheart, he said to Lily. What do you think? Should Anna and I try to start a business together? Lily considered this with 8-year-old seriousness. Will you build good houses? Like the one you drew for Mommy? David's throat tightened. Kate had always said he should follow his dreams, that he had too much talent to waste on other people's projects. Yeah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We'd build really good houses. Then you should do it, Lily said matter-of-factly, returning to her dolls. Anna smiled. I think your daughter just gave us our first board resolution. David laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. Anna Chen, are you serious about this? More serious than I've ever been about anything, Anna replied. The question is, are you ready to build something amazing? 6 months later, David stood in front of their newest completed home, watching as the Johnson family got their keys. Mrs. Johnson was crying happy tears while her 2 young children ran around the front yard, claiming their favorite spots for a future swing set. It's perfect, Mrs. Johnson said, hugging Anna. I can't believe we actually own our own home. Anna smiled, remembering her own tears from a very different time. You worked hard for this. You and your husband saved every penny for that down payment. But without your program, we never could have afforded it, Mr. Johnson said, shaking David's hand firmly. These energy-efficient features you built in. Our first month's electric bill was $60. 60. Our old apartment was costing us $200 a month just for electricity. David grinned. Wait until winter. With that solar system and the improved insulation, you'll be amazed at how little your heating bills are. After the Johnson family went inside to start unpacking, David and Anna walked back toward their office. It was housed in a converted garage behind David's house, nothing fancy, but it worked. A hand-painted sign outside read, Thompson Chen Construction Building Dreams. One home at a time. That never gets old, Anna said, watching the family through their new front window. What, seeing people get their keys? Seeing the moment when someone realizes their life just changed for the better? David nodded, understanding completely. This was their 7th completed home, with 15 more in various stages of construction. Each one used his modular design system, making them faster to build and more affordable to buy, while Anna's business systems ensured they stayed profitable and could hire more workers. Speaking of lives changing, David said, I got a call from Tony Rodriguez this morning. He wants to thank you personally. Tony had been one of their first hires, a former construction worker who'd been out of work for 8 months before David brought him on. Anna had noticed that Tony had a gift for training the younger workers and had suggested promoting him to crew supervisor. Tony doesn't need to thank me, Anna said. He earned that promotion. Well, he's buying a house. Found a nice place near his kids' school. Says it's the first time in 2 years he's been able to plan more than a month ahead. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the residential street, and David could see Lily through their kitchen window, probably doing homework at the table. Anna, David said suddenly, can I ask you something I've been wondering about? Sure, do you ever regret it? Walking away from your family's world? Starting over with a small construction company in a tiny town? Anna considered this question seriously. You mean, do I miss having unlimited money and fancy parties and people telling me how brilliant I am? Yeah, I guess that's what I mean. Anna stopped walking and looked at David. You know what I miss most about my old life? Nothing, absolutely nothing. That world was full of people who wanted to use me or impress me, but nobody who actually knew me. She gestured toward their modest office, then toward David's house where Lily was visible in the window. Here, I have real relationships. I have work that matters. I have purpose. Even after everything you went through, the bridge, sleeping in your car, the shelter. Especially after all that, Anna said firmly. That experience taught me what actually matters. It's not about how much money you have or how successful you look to other people. It's about whether you're doing something meaningful with people you care about. They reached the office and Anna unlocked the door. The walls were covered with photos, completed homes, happy families, their growing crew of workers, architectural drawings for future projects. In the corner sat a small framed photo of Kate, something David had brought from home when they'd first set up the office. Kate would be proud of this, Anna said, noticing David looking at the photo. I think about that a lot, David said. She always said I was meant to build things that would last. Not just houses, but communities, relationships, a future for Lily. Anna sat down at her desk, which was covered with invoices, contracts, and architectural plans. How is Lily adjusting to all the changes? David's face lit up the way it always did when someone asked about his daughter. She loves it. Yesterday she told her teacher that her dad and Anna build houses for families who need them. She's already planning what kind of house she wants when she grows up. Apparently it needs to have solar panels and a room for her art supplies. Smart kid. She's got her father's practical mind and creative spirit. She asks about you when you're not around, you know, David said. Last week she asked if you were going to be her family forever. Anna felt her throat tighten with emotion. What did you tell her? I told her that families aren't just about blood. They're about people who show up for each other, who care about each other, who stick together through good times and hard times. Anna wiped at her eyes, surprised by the sudden tears. I never thought I'd have a family like this. Me either, David admitted. After Kate died, I thought that part of my life was over. I figured it would just be me and Lily against the world. And now? David looked around their small office at the evidence of everything they'd built together. Now I feel like we're part of something bigger. Not just our little family, but this whole community we're helping to build. Anna nodded, thinking about all the people they'd employed, all the families they'd housed, all the connections they'd made. Remember that first night at the diner? You said sometimes we can't see the next step, we just have to trust that it's there. I remember. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be running a construction company in a small town, living in a rented room above Betty's niece's garage and happier than I'd ever been in my life, I would have thought they were crazy. David laughed. If someone had told me I'd be business partners with someone I met on a bridge at 3 in the morning, I probably would have had the same reaction. Anna stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the street where children were playing in yards of homes they'd helped build. You know what I want to do? What? I want to go back to the bridge. David raised an eyebrow. Any particular reason? I've been thinking about it as the place where my old life ended, Anna said. But it wasn't really an ending, was it? It was a beginning. It was where I met you, where everything started to change. It was where we both started over, David agreed, so let's go. Let's take Lily and go watch the sunset from the bridge. But this time, instead of looking down at the water wondering if there's any hope left, we can look out at all of this. She gestured toward the town around them, toward the life they'd built together. An hour later, the three of them stood on the riverside bridge as the sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Lily was pointing out shapes in the clouds while David and Anna leaned against the railing, the safe side this time. Do you think other people go through this? Anna asked quietly. Having their whole life fall apart before they figure out what they're supposed to be doing? I think most people do, David said. The lucky ones just find someone to help them through it. Anna smiled, watching Lily chase a butterfly that had landed on the bridge. We should put up a plaque or something. This bridge changes lives. What would it say? Anna thought for a moment. Something about second chances. About how sometimes the worst night of your life is actually the first night of your real life. David nodded, then pulled out his phone and took a photo of the three of them with the sunset behind them. For the office wall, he said. For remembering how far we've come, Anna added. As they walked back to the truck, Lily skipping ahead of them, Anna realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about jumping. These days she was too busy building.